Hello, everyone. Brother Al McLean with this week's stewardship video. And before we begin, let me read the disclaimer and we'll get into this week's video. No advice should be seen as recommendation, as I'm not a licensed financial advisor and it's for educational purposes only. And as I'm recording this on Saturday, we're about 1 or 2 days into the official start of fall. And one of the things my wife gave me this week is a shirt that says honeydew. And that's a term that is designed to describe the husbands of AKA members, honeydews, honeydew this, do that. And this shirt says, always ready to serve. And there's a spatula and a hammer. And I think is appropriate because on Saturdays, I go to an early Bible study fellowship leadership meeting in which I serve on Monday nights for facilitating a children's Bible lesson. And of course, on Saturdays, I record the stewardship video, which is another active service. So I think that as a backdrop is a great backdrop for today's topic, where I'm revisiting what is biblical stewardship, which is a video I did in January of 2021. And what inspired that is conversations I've had with people to say, hey, Al, I don't need a budget or a spending plan for my money. I don't make enough. Or the topic of biblical stewardship, oh, I don't really need that because that's a talk about wealth management. Well, that's of course wrong. Those of you who've been following the videos know that's not a proper description and definition of biblical stewardship. So when we look at biblical stewardship, we start with the foundation that Jesus is Lord. And therefore, as Lord, and as we always end the videos, therefore he's the owner. So we follow the principles that he set up for us. There's over 2,000 scriptures in the Bible which speak of money and possessions. So there's plenty of principles, directives, and guidance that God has given us regarding the resource. So resources, the common three we talk about, but here we talk about treasure, but it's time, talent, and treasure. And we talk about treasure here, which, in my opinion, we spend the most time earning a living. We often spend our talents earning that living. So that goes under treasure. So I think treasure kind of, things kind of revolve around it. But we know stewardship is everything. Everything belongs to God because it comes from the Lord. So let's look at the definition in a video that I think is great, that talks about bringing us back to the definition of what stewardship is.
To most of us, the true glory in God's design is hidden. All we have received from Him is precious, but we don't realize it. The significance has been lost. Every blessing, talent, and resource the King has entrusted to us is rich with powerful kingdom potential. But over time, the value of these gifts has been diminished, like treasure tarnished from misuse and neglect, a secular handling of the sacred. But we can rediscover the true purpose and promise wrapped within God's gifts. In fact, we must. The time has come, not to take what is ours, but to restore a proper perspective of the truth, that these are gifts, not possessions, that we are managers, not owners. It's time to honor the giver by taking the responsibility he gave us for the gifts, something that will require diligence and work to remove the corrosion that obscures their true brightness. We can do it by managing all of God's blessings, God's way, for God's glory, all across this great nation. It's time to reclaim stewardship. And in so doing, we will rediscover that he wants to use these gifts in our hands to multiply blessings and fruitfulness greater than we could ever imagine. With one generation changing guard to the next, with the world becoming darker every season, with need growing greater every hour. Now is the time.
I think that's an excellent definition. Managing God's possessions, God's way, for God's glory. And I've looked at it before and described to you two components of biblical stewardship, stewardship and generosity. And if you look at the stick figure of the person walking, it's a journey that includes stewardship and generosity. You're walking on 2 feet. Stewardship, generosity, stewardship, generosity. So biblical stewardship is the act of recognizing God as Lord and owner, fulfilling the God-given responsibility to wisely manage money and resources, what belongs to God according to his principles. Psalm 24:1 talks about everything belongs to God. 1 Corinthians 4:2 talks about now as a person put in charge as managers, we must be faithful. And then the other part we talked about is generosity. Giving that is a result of a transformed heart. Recognition that God owns everything and that we as the great recipients of his grace and love enjoy the privilege of participating in God's care for others. In Acts 20:35, and this is Jesus speaking, remember the words of the Lord Jesus, that it is more blessed to give than receive. So if you think about this, you've got that two-pronged approach, but some people say, well, I don't have enough to be generous, or I don't have enough to practice stewardship principles. Pay attention to this video. I love this video that you can find in the generousgiving.org. You can go out to generousgiving.org, and under stories, you can find this video.
As I reflect back on the journey of my life, I think about how God directed me to Kampala for that workshop. I had a burden for my church to give from their hearts and not out of duty. But I never thought it would take such a horrible situation for me and my town to realize that we all needed to change.
In 2001, the ADF army overtook many regions of western Uganda, forcing over 80,000 survivors into the turmoil and destitution of refugee camps. As the war raged on, hope along with the moral fiber of the people faded. But there was one who chose to inspire through generosity and gracious giving, and this is his story.
My name is Hannington Bahemuka, but most people call me Bishop Hannington. The life in the camps was very bad because families would crowd in the shack houses, children would go without food for 1, 2, 3 days, water was not available, and death started resulting within a short time.
Kandi obwiro butwararaga njala tugiesala kwabagule mwaka gwa 1997 bakabonabona ubulemu bwakahoyomba barakwenda skulu bakabulaga kitabo kibabura ndumi bakala kubonabona.
How can I, Lord? How can I help them out of this situation?
While everything around him was disintegrating, war could not destroy Hannington's commitment to effective stewardship.
The Lord spoke to my heart about putting into practice what I had learned at the International Steward Workshop. I had been taught that everything we have belongs to God. So even in this refugee camp, God has put abundant resources for his work. So I called upon the believers to start sharing what they have with the needy.
Kuruga Bishop Hannington Bahemuka akutuleteraga bageni batwegesia kigambo kyokugaba.
In the camps, we started a campaign to provide blankets to the orphans, and it was the first time we saw the principles come to life.
Niwaga bali kurungi nkamumanya nanga kanyamba tina ku
After 2 miserable years in captivity, it was safe to return home to Bundigujo, only to find that all had been destroyed.
The houses had been torn down, the farms had nothing in them, churches had been demolished, schools were devastated, so we started from scratch.
Tukaba tuli omukasomya k'omuhito okubonabona n'amajunega kanie. Hawe ebizibu ebituli nabyo mu makanisa abantu kyabangwera kuhayo sente.
The needs seemed too great, leaving the people asking the all too common question, how can the people from the West help us? However, Huntington inspired his people to ask a different question.
I asked, how soon can my people rise to the challenge of funding not only their immediate needs, but their futures as well? I told the people at that time that God has given us everything we need to rebuild our community. And what he needed was others to make themselves available to him, and he was going to use us. And those of us who are mechanics, those of us who are business people, they can use their gifts and the trade that they have to build their community.
He taught us about giving, and through that, the pastors went around teaching. So through that, the message was spread.
Anagua dumbi na tua mukwe kwatia mukama nenku bisanja kantigie sio na kolaki dumbi obutwaguria nyanya mtukwera ntubare kitokubara.
One by one, person by person, the idea caught on, and before they knew it, the town was being transformed.
We began to rebuild our churches, provided homes and schooling for the orphans, and the needs of the people were met.
The people understood that they needed to create wealth in order to allow for tangible generosity. By using their God-given gifts and resources they already possessed, a cycle of sustainability was established.
We have a lady in our church. She is lame, but one day we were calling upon people to bring their gifts to come and build a church.
Katanika bakagaba tia kwesa mtima wanje kina yankoko mana wanje kamwibia kamwaya bo mana wanje ne kanisha foto yamba.
And today the church she worships in is made of bricks, and we look at that as a wonderful example of gracious giving.
Children of the earth.
Tingisie kabo kandi tukwegwa gantu onjera kimo kolera ruhanga mukialo engabani jaya tungo kotokari.
And this message can work in every situation, in every country, because surely generosity is transformational.
Out of the jungle of war and destruction, one pioneer leader, inspired by generosity, shared the vision with his community. No longer waiting for outside relief, the grace of giving has replaced a welfare mentality, and an entire town was rebuilt.
That is such a powerful video. I encourage you to go out to Generous Giving, and it's under Bishop Hannington that you can see that that video over and over again. So one of the things they talked about is not giving out of generosity, not giving out of duty, but getting out of a transformed heart. So you'll have to ask yourself, where am I? Am I a self-absorbed owner, meaning, it's my stuff, I do what I want to? Obligated owner, that's the, doing it out of duty, and obedient owner, again, doing it out of duty. What we want to do is the bottom right corner of this is love-inspired steward, 100% God's. I have given God total authority over my stuff, and of course, all my talents and time as well. So let's go over and transition over and look at the market. We are ending the third quarter, about to go into the last quarter of the year. So these earnings announcements will start to come hard and heavy in the next couple of weeks, because they'll be reporting third quarter earnings. So it'll be interesting to see what Bed Bath & Beyond, because they've been closing stores. We talked about, I don't know if I mentioned it, but there was unfortunate situation where the CFO took its own life based on something, what was going on at Bed Bath & Beyond. And one of my Bible study brothers said, mental health challenges are real. And so be interesting what they're going to report. Carnival is reporting, are we seeing people now coming out of their cabin fever and starting to travel? That'll be an indicator there. So this is an interesting slide. I take a service called Options Play. Now you can get this, I think it's on stock charts or .com. You can go out and type in sector rotation. And this is kind of short term, but it's interesting the way things, rotate in and out of strength. Like right now, going into this week, leading is now technology, discretionary industrials. And you can, these are exchange traded funds that you're using here, and you can always look them up at what they are. But here for leading is technology, discretionary industrials. And we know how much beaten up technology was, but now it's leading because at a certain point it becomes so beaten up that people go back in and buy it up. Now weakening were things that were strengths earlier because it was defensive type stocks, utilities, staples, energy, healthcare. Now they're starting to weaken, lagging, and this has been, we had the housing boom, but now it's starting to lag, and then improving is financial. So that's how you can read this chart, and you can always go look up if you don't know what that exchange traded fund symbol is to see what it is. The other thing, which could be an opportunity, but it's a threat. We know we're in hurricane season, and there are 2 hurricanes right now. Fiona, I think, is a tropical storm, projected to be a hurricane, and then Ian, which is Fiona is heading toward Canada, and Ian is heading toward like the Florida coast. And we've talked about it before. Generac is a possible trade you can do because it tends to go up doing hurricanes. And when there's a lot of hurricanes, well, you can actually invest using Schwab stock slices. And I put this up not only to show Generac is there, but notice how these sectors are set up by what we were looking at, the sector rotation. So you can always go create your own exchange traded fund. You can go like to the consumer discretionary or staples or energy. And when you click on these, it gives you the symbols of stocks, which you can buy slices of, in as low as $5 increments. So Generac, I had to go back for I went back several years on this, like 2 years, and you can see it's been in a steady decline. So the high was at one time $505 for Generac. I don't know if it'll ever get back there, but it's at a low now, $171.08, a low for I think it's about a 2 or 3 year low here, and it's in a decline. So maybe it's the possibility, but you also be careful, don't try to, catch a falling knife. Look at it as a long-term play, and maybe you could do it through those stock slices. Another one that has been popping is defense, and that's because of the belief that Putin is going to escalate the war even more. He's actually starting the draft in Russia. So it's in a decline in the last couple of weeks for those defense stocks, but there were, and you see my pointer here, when the war was looking like it's going to escalate even more, buyers went in here, buyers went in here, then everything has been going down and in the last couple of days. Why? One reason, interest rate hike. It's looking, they did hike the 75% basis points on the last meeting. Well, the next meeting is not to the November 2nd, and they're already saying there's a 76% chance that they're going to raise it another 75 basis points. The interesting thing about this is when it's so far out, it usually doesn't start this high of a percentage of an increase. So the market could be treating it one or two ways, that it's already baked in, which is why you're seeing the selling going on right now, or the feeling that not only is it baked in, but more and more pain to come. And I'm no guru. No one knows the future except the Lord. But I think there's more pain coming because the Fed has all but said there's going to be pain, and they want to stop inflation. Chairman Powell kept talking about Volcker, which was a previous Fed chairman who he admires, and that's what he did. He strangled inflation to stop. But what happened is we got thrown into a double recession. You can look at all the selling that's going on. Here's QQQ, and here's the previous line. I took some off. So now these lines are representing, before they were support, they're resistance now. And here's support. It just blew through it. I had to go all the way back to 2020 to draw these lines of the next support that's available. Same thing with SPY. A lot of selling going on. Blew through those supports. Now all of that becomes resistance to get back up again. And this line again, I had to go all the way back to 2020 to find the next like support line that it may bounce off of. So, I mean, all that's adding up is that there's more pain to come. So what do we talk about? You know, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and self-discipline, or some translations self-control. So use this to possibly look at some stocks you've always wanted to own, or use this as a time to go to cash and waiting for you when you feel more comfortable. Because I know looking at your 401k, that's the indicator where you're looking at it, it could strike more fear. But use it as an opportunity to go to stock slices, you know, things you've always wanted to own. This is the chance to do it. Or go to cash. Do not stop contributing to your 401k. Maybe you stop contributing to specific mutual funds, and you're going to wait till you think there's a rebound starting. So that's the end of this week's video. We'll be back next week, of course, for next week's video. As always, as my pastor Denny White Davis says, you know, have a good week. Remember to keep a good spirit. And as we say with the stewardship video, remember Jesus is Lord, as we talked about, what is biblical stewardship. Therefore, he's the owner, but we follow his principles, you know, to glorify him with his stuff God's way.